You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. We know our genes can be switched on and off, but what if they could be trained by the lives we lead? Find out more about this fascinating connection in today's episode. This episode contains adult subject matter, and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore how the lives we lead can shape our health in ways that stretch far beyond genetics. This conversation opens up a perspective on healing that challenges what many of us believe is already fixed and asks us to look at the small and large influences that can change the course of our well-being. Jason Ott is a health consultant, author, and speaker with nearly 2 decades of experience helping people facing complex illness. His journey began when his mother battled brain cancer, while her identical twin lived cancer-free, sparking his lifelong study of epigenetics and the deeper causes of disease. After facing his own health challenges in his 20s, Jason turned to nutrition, lifestyle medicine, and integrative care, restoring his well-being and shaping the way he works with others. Today, he guides clients ranging from those seeking prevention to those with late-stage diagnoses, building bio-individual paths that bring together conventional medicine, lifestyle change, and collaborative care. His mission is to empower people with hope and practical options on their healing journey. Here is my interview with Jason Ott. Hi, Jason. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because we'll be talking a little bit about empowered prevention and also all the things that come after the prevention part. So thank you for joining me today and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do that. I think that as we were just talking before we started this, there's a lot in common, even though we live in 2 different countries.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that. Empowered health, empowered well-being, empowered wellness. These are really important topics that I think everyone across the planet is facing in these times. So how do we take care of ourselves? How do we not become ill? Or what do we do once we become ill or feel unwell? So these are big topics that impact our lives. So I'm glad you're here to help us untangle some of these things and shed some light on what's happening. Do you want to start us off maybe with a little bit about your own journey or your own story, maybe the pieces that connect up with what you do today, and also give our listeners a bit of insight about what it is that you do today?
Okay, yes, I can do that. I'm going to summarize this, so it might come across as a little cold because I'm going to do it quick, but I need for you to understand why and I'm at where I'm at now. So I got into the health field because my mom, when I was really young, had brain cancer. She was an identical twin, and she beat the cancer and didn't lose her life from the cancer, actually remained cancer-free till the day she died. But that got me into the health field because essentially after she had a clean slate of health, we could not find the people to prevent her body from breaking down more and strengthen it from the treatments and the things she's been through. So by the time we did, she was already on disability and in an assisted living home. So that got me into my career, which I thought I was learning all the things to teach other people how to help their family and themselves in a similar situation, possibly prevent. Then I had my own health issues go on to where I eventually got diagnosed high blood pressure, colitis. I had some big time issues going to the bathroom, which later found a few different things in my microbiome and some toxicity. And so then I went back to school because I felt like the first wave of schooling was not about organ health. It wasn't teaching us how we can stack the deck in our favor throughout our life. It was very surface level and vague and mostly about aesthetics. When I went back, it was like, I have a problem internally in my 20s. The caveat to this is my mom's identical twin is still alive and has never had cancer. So when I got diagnosed, that was the first thing I said back to the doctor was, what are the other aspects of disease that contribute to me having this so young while no one else does? So it's genetic and this and this. These are your options. So when he said that, of course, I had to ask the question about my mom. That is what blew this wide open. Thankfully, I did not have good health care at the time of my diagnosis. I say that now, thankfully, because it made me go the route of herbalism, food, lifestyle, just to do anything until I could hopefully get some level of insurance. But by the time I did, I was cruising along. I definitely was not fully healed, but I had resolved a lot of issues and found the right doctors and facilities that I needed to make progress this way. So now I teach that to people in a clinical setting, whether you're prevention or you're going through it in the middle of a stage 3, stage 4 cancer. We are seeing the sickest of the sick here. And usually we're working across multiple professions. So that's one big thing we're different in. We want to talk to the other doctors or lymphatic drainage or chiropractic or whatever you need to resolve what's going on. We're really trying to bring that communication across professionals here.
Wow, I love that. And I'm imagining this place of healing that you're a part of, multidisciplinary. And really, I feel like that is a wonderful place for people who are experiencing physical, mental, emotional challenges to be in a place where they are seen, they're heard, they can find the support. And like yourself, they can find a support tailored to what is going on with them. That is very often a difficult piece to find, is a unique path for someone to find their own healing. So, from your own experience, it seems that you also made that same kind of experience of, okay, well, being told one thing didn't really work for me. I had to go on this journey to find out what I actually needed. Maybe let our listeners know a little bit about what kind of things you're working on when somebody comes to see you. And although we love to think that people want to come preventatively, unfortunately, as we discussed, mostly that's not the case. Mostly we wait until something bad happens and then we go, oh, we have to really do something now. So when people come to see you and you said the sickest of the sick, where do you start when people come to the clinic, your place of healing, and they're very ill, all sorts of challenges like physical cancer or anything like that? Where do you start with them? Where do you start working from when you're trying to decide what this path might look like for them?
Yeah, it seems to be that people have, and there obviously are exceptions to this rule, but they have been through the gauntlet for 5, 10, 15 years or more with chronic things. And so they've done a lot. They've tried a lot. They've had different tests, different professionals, tried a million supplements, all of these things. So the first thing I like to do is sit down with them. And before I look at anything lab work wise, I want them to tell me their story in their own words, how they feel they got there, because there's usually things they reveal that are very important for me to help them that are not going to show up in a lab test. I start that way. I need a timeline. I need to know how you got here, what you've tried, what you haven't. I can start to figure out where the holes are in what you haven't addressed. And I write about that in my book of like, that is critical. You got to know where you've been to know where you're going, else you're going to repeat some of the same mistakes. So laying all that stuff out, then we get into the lab work and start to figure out that. I take a little bit different approach because most of the patients have a primary care physician, and then they also might have an alternative doctor that's overseeing some things. And I'm more helping consult with them to make sure they're taking the step forward that doesn't pigeonhole them. And what I mean by that is like time, money, energy. There's only a certain amount we all have, and that's different for all of us. So I don't want someone to choose to do something that will not even be able to play out the right way to get a benefit from it. I've seen people waste a lot of their money in their bank account and then they don't have any resources left. We pick the path of least resistance. I lay out options to them, and then I want them to tell me what they feel they can do consistently for the long term. That's the direction we go. I want to always have them on a path of laying a foundation that leads to better health in a year, 2 years, 5 years. And then in the moment, we have the other professionals too, including myself, to address some of those symptoms as you're making that long-term progress. I like to zoom out 30,000-foot view, get them out of the weeds, out of the emotions, because they're usually in it, and try to see it from this top-down perspective so you can make better decisions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially because, of course, when you are faced with challenges, and especially grave challenges like terminal diagnoses or anything like that, there are a lot of emotions and fear and sometimes even hopelessness involved in all of that. So I would imagine it's hard in those situations to even see any kind of path clearly forward, and to have somebody help you figure that out, I feel would be a really helpful thing. I want to just circle back to your mom for a moment, because I'm curious as to your perspective on what happened, in a sense that your mom was an identical twin, and you can clearly see there were very different health journeys between her and her sister, her identical twin. Did that give you any insight into how healing or disease happens? What kind of things are involved in these processes? Did that spark anything in your own perspective, watching two people whom you love having such different experiences in their health journeys?
Yeah, it definitely did, because it made me ask questions that conventionally weren't being asked and were not being addressed, honestly. For me, at the time, it made me a little upset about just, oh, it's just genes. Oh, you're screwed. It was a very hopeless belief. Now I'm fascinated by epigenetics, because that's essentially what happened. My mom and my aunt had the same exact genes, but events happened, physical, emotional, spiritual, maybe, that upregulated certain genes in my mom that were disease causing, which led to her diagnosis. What were those? That's exactly what I've been spending the rest of my life trying to unpack. But yes, from the standpoint of like, how does our environment impact our physiology and our state? And so it's just been an amazing journey to find the proof around that, and then be able to share that with people who do believe that. Because most people who believe in a higher power do believe you can heal, do believe there is health. If there's disease, there's health. So they're like, this makes more sense. There is some level of our control. We're just not screwed. For me, it's changed it to what we can do through that journey. So looking at their situations, there was a few specific things that didn't happen to one of the others. And so that led me into the world of epigenetics, whereas like these have to matter in the big picture of what's going on.
Yeah. And that actually, I feel, gives us some hope. Like you said, we're not just pawns in our genetics. We have some control over what we can accomplish there. So that is actually a really hopeful thing that you're sharing here. And I'm curious also about the efficacy of these paths. So, of course, people who have very challenging illnesses are concerned about, will something other than chemotherapy or drugs or anything else, will that actually work? Can I treat my illness this way? Can I have a successful path this way? What is your experience in the many clients and patients that you have worked with? How does this alternative approach, or these alternative medicines, healing methods, anything that you offer, how does that compare to sort of the more conventional paths that people might choose when they're facing an illness like cancer, for example? Where do you feel that we land with that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because part of the epigenetics, I think it was important to me that I didn't just find anecdotal situations, that I could also find in a repeatable setting and also evidence in clinical setting. I want to see all of those things. The College of Lifestyle Medicine, Dr. Dean Ornish, he created that back. It spawned because he reversed heart disease in 1990 through diet and lifestyle. But going through that, finding those doctors to say, hey, look, it's a repeatable process for this prostate cancer. Or if you're dealing with this level of breast cancer, these things work as a standalone. So if you put food change, which everyone should be able to agree that if we eat better, that's pretty safe to do next to chemo and radiation. And then if the person's open to it and has the education around it, there's different herbs that are extremely safe to use through that entire process too. There's an education behind it of letting them know this exists, giving them the clinical information because people want that. But then the one thing now I can do, because I've been doing this long enough, is introduce them to others that have been through it, who have came out the other side and are cancer free or don't have that autoimmune. They can learn how it does work together to provide synergy. So what I more speak about with them is all the things we can do together at the same time instead of separately, and why we can do that and why it is healthy and safe for you to do. Being that I witnessed the negative effects in my own mom, I can speak to it directly. We didn't do this. This is what happened. This patient over here who's still alive did do this, and look at her now. So I can very clearly lay that out for people. That opens their mind up to then go, okay, I got to check into this. So there is an element of the unknown, but I think that most of the people that I'm working with, it's their last straw anyway. They're open to it. They're like, whatever I got to do. But I think that the biggest thing is we try to do things together and not have people go either or. Find all the layers because you're going to need it when you're facing things like that. And those are the people that actually heal, adding multiple layers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I do feel that element of the unknown exists either way. There's no guarantee, whichever path you choose, whether that's a conventional allopathic medicine path or something different. I feel like that uncertainty will be there no matter what. So it's something that we have to learn to live with as we're venturing through these health journeys. On that note, how do you work with your patients with these, I would imagine, really big feelings that come up? As I mentioned before, there seems to me a lot of fear around, am I making the right decisions? Can I survive this? When we face our own mortality, these are big questions and that come up and affect us in our daily lives. How do you work with the fear, the hopelessness, sometimes the skepticism or hesitation around all the negative things that come up when we're faced with an illness like that, and also a decision of how we want to move forward?
I think that's the biggest reason why I start with listening is because I need to understand them emotionally, where their mind is, what they believe in, what they don't believe in. I used to have more rigid thinking around what was right for people to do. But now, if someone comes to me and they really believe, hey, if I do this bit of radiation and this, and then I do these things, like I know that gives me the best choice, I'm not going to talk them out of that, no matter what I think it's their life. I'm going to follow what they believe because that gives them momentum instead of trying to uproot some of those beliefs that are so fragile right now. So I try to second that and build on that. That's a big part of it. But then the second is we got to talk about our spiritual and mental health once you got your routine going. I think what I've realized and try to pull people away from is we stay on the internet. Let's say we take a patient, they got all their stuff going, they got their lifestyle change, they're making progress, and then they see a post about a new supplement or a new thing that they can do for therapy. And I try to direct them mind, body, spirit. You have your things for your physical body. Now we need to come over here and emotionally invest. And then to deal with the unknown, what's your spiritual practice like? What do you believe in that helps you process the unknown So you can have faith as you're walking forward, right? And I'm open to whatever that is for the person, but I want them to locate that because that's the people that I've seen go into full remission. They have that figured out to some degree, or at least how to process those things. It's night and day different with the progress someone makes. So I really strongly try to get them to invest in mind, body, and spirit. What I call the being triad is we have to eventually work into all three, else you're not going to get the end result you want, or it'll be a little muddy, so to speak.
Yeah, I do feel like those things cannot work in isolation. So we have to work on all of those together. And of course, maybe as we are coming through certain pieces, we're adding on more as we're getting more comfortable with the physical piece. We look at the spiritual and then we look at the emotional or mental health. So, absolutely. But I agree that we cannot isolate those things, and working on only one of them feels like we're not giving ourselves the best potential to actually come out the other end. Now, share a little bit about what a path like this could look like. I feel like our listeners might be really curious. We're talking about different ways that people can support themselves. Let's take maybe an example of an autoimmune or something like that. And what could a path for a person look like? What kind of options would they even have available or might not know about at this point in their journey that you come across that are fairly common or that you usually find work well for people or work together with other different pieces? What could that journey look like for someone who comes to see you?
Yes, I think twofold is everybody wants to go from being unhealthy to healthy. So I try to explain the path forward is a good 6 to 36 months, and there's a slowing phase. So, like, before we get to going forward with our health, we got to get to neutral. So, depending on where that person is, like, there might be some momentum from their lifestyle habits, inflammation, that even once you make positive changes, you still deal with some of those symptoms as it comes to a halt. Then there's like this middle ground where you're in a neutral phase. You're not getting worse finally for the first time in your life, and you're starting to figure out how to get better. And then you finally start to, with whatever that looks like, blood work or how you feel. Let the person understand and know that piece is going to take place. Then I try to ask the questions about mind, body, spirit to see where can we start? What can you do really easily that you can do consistently? Get all those things going for the person because that'll give them natural momentum, and then figure out the other pieces. So I try not to force something, but like, I know you'll get there. We're just going to do this first. So based on what the person's open to, I share that information with them. For example, if nutritionally you come to me and you're not interested, or maybe you don't have the means to make a complete diet change, but you can do a few key things, that's all we're going to do. And then I'm going to move over and talk to you about herbs, or hey, this therapy in our clinic with doing ozone saunas or nutritional IVs or hyperbarics can really help this. And I'm not even going to push any harder. If down the road you want to do a little bit more nutritionally, great. I kind of find where their limit is in each of these buckets of how it can help you, and then introduce that next layer. As long as they start to move forward, I'm perfectly fine. Before moving to that next layer, though, I say, hey, if we're not making the progress you want, then we're going to come back here because there's an opportunity, and this is why. So I'm always explaining both sides, respecting the decision, and then bringing up that next option. If there really is not another option or another professional I know about that can help fill that gap or whatever it is, then that's what I got to tell them. But I try to see, because I feel like there's a lot of help that can be around. We're just not all in one place. So I made it my point to find these people and then just introduce them, get them to the professionals they need. And so I try to give them more of that, of like, I've had 5 different autoimmune clients go 5 different directions on diet, and all of them got to the end result. But this is why. So talking through all those components, there's a lot of education behind it, because I know this is not something a lot of people experience and see. A lot of education on what that can look like and trying to help them feel confident in the decision they're making that they'll get there.
Yeah. I like that. And as I said before, I like this unique and individual approach to whatever that specific person is experiencing in their lives. Very fascinating. And I know that we said before, prevention would be even better so that people come and see you before anything goes wrong. Are there certain cornerstones that you're aware of, or that, in your opinion, would actually be some basic things that we could all implement already to work a bit more on the prevention? Are there things that you've noticed, maybe certain patterns in your patients where you say, okay, I think everybody should be doing this or this in their lives because those are two or three things I've noticed working for everyone? Is there anything like that that you can share with our listeners?
Yes, I think that there's buckets. I would say these are the buckets everyone can usually find something they can improve. The toxic load would be one. And when I say toxic load, I moved from Michigan and we had horrible metal problems in our water. That was part of why I got sick with colitis, was I had heavy metals in my body. So that gave me a certain level of lower inflammation when I lowered those. My microbiome. So what's going on in there? Everyone throws probiotics at it, and maybe you need bacteria. In my case, when I did a stool test, a GI map test, I had all my healthy bugs. They weren't balanced, but I had them. Now, what the problem was, I had a couple infections in my actual intestines of bacteria and a virus. I could then get after those with herbs, antiviral, antibacterial. That made a whole big change. Then it moved into, oh, geez, I got these deficiencies. Cellular, I'm not absorbing nutrients. I got to get them into my organs. I think these buckets apply to every person. How you replenish those nutrients can be done a lot of ways. How you knock down a viral load or bacterial load in your intestines, quite a few different ways you can do that. So I think those is how I'd approach it, is see if any of those really jump out to you like, man, I've really dealt with a problem with that. And then going back through it and identifying how and what you need to do to replenish or change that. Those, no person has ever come to our clinic, regardless of the disease or not, that doesn't have something going on with their toxic load, microbiome, or deficiencies. It's like we all can improve health, even if we feel good, but we always uncover those things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, also considering our diet and access to food and all of those fantastic things that we are facing in many different places on the planet. So that's a good, very good first step for people to start with, even if they're feeling okay at the moment, for sure. Is there anything to be said? I know that when I had mental health challenges, doctors continuously kept telling me to move. Exercise, that's the fix all for everything. How does that fit into how you work with your clients and patients? Where does movement and exercise plug in?
Yes, so that's a great question, because my start actually was in personal training, the exercise realm. That was the physical body that my mom lost the function of. So I wanted to learn how to support the bones and the muscles and all of that. It's definitely evolved over time. I have to go back to the drawing board on, has someone exercised themselves out of an autoimmune? No, there's steps before that. We haven't done that with other diseases too, or, and honestly, mental health. Some people cannot exercise where they're at. They need to do other things first before that layer comes in. So I look at exercise as just any other type of layer. When your body is ready, when your nervous system is ready, when your life is set up for it, then we bring it in. But I don't force anyone into intense exercise. If you can go for a walk for 30 minutes, winning. If you're doing that 4 or 5 days a week and we get to that point, great. Down the road, it might change and you're doing a yoga class or Pilates or something, awesome. But I got to stick with the things that, when people are at their lowest, how do we pull them out of there? Because to me, those are the foundations that really move the needle. Then those pieces come in. And as a standalone, exercise is very important. Don't get me wrong, for our longevity. But with the clientele I'm working with, to get them out of that hole, that's not the first priority. That's the second step. They need some other things first to get a baseline, then can bring that in. As to where my partner, who I used to run a gym with, he has a bunch of people that are primed and ready for that. So they're at a different phase and they're working out harder and they're in more structured programs, but it's all built around reducing inflammation. A lot of people don't know you can exercise and reduce inflammation as well. It's just knowing where that person is, right? And then making sure they're not trying to do something too soon just because they feel pressure for some sort of reason.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And thank you for sharing that because there seems to be a lot of advice around, well, you need to eat clean, you need to exercise, you need to sleep well, and that will fix all your problems. So it's probably
Right.
good to keep in mind we do this maybe in an order that works best for that individual person and work with it that way. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Jason, how can our listeners work with you if they're facing health challenges, mental health challenges, or they don't know where to start or even who to speak to? What kind of programs and services do you offer in your setting or your clinical setting where people might be able to connect with you and work with you?
Yeah, I would answer that two ways. So I look at it as just consulting. As you can see, I'm very bio individual. So I don't have something that I can lay out and go, week one is this, week two is this, week three. I don't know you yet. Once I get to know you, then we can start to map that out. So it is different. Some people just want that. How I usually do, we meet, we get your health history, and then we decide together, do we need to meet every couple weeks, once a month? And we slowly figure out what the right frequency is to give you enough time to find the professionals you need, make the changes you need to make, and then keep going. I wrote my book because I wanted to give enough information where even if someone never hired me, they could then take that and try to locate professionals in their city or country, wherever they're at, that can fill one of those gaps, right? So essentially, that's what I do for the person. I don't need to be seeing you in person. We can do all this over the phone. We're having a conversation and consulting, and I'm trying to help uncover what might be in your backyard that can help you. So often I'm Googling the person's city, I'm helping them search for different professionals if you're not in mine. If you're here, local to me, then of course I have a lot of relationships with people here. But in a nutshell, that's how I like to go. It's always by individual. So I have some patients that are with me once a month for a couple years, and then there's some that will come. I see them every 3 to 6 months, and that's how they like because of what they do. But they both make results. So I really try to help that person figure out what's best for them, and then we do it that way.
Amazing. And share with us the title of your book, Jason.
It's No Cure, No Problem, The Art of Healing.
Wonderful. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Jason's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there for where you can get a copy of his book if you'd like to dip your toes and find out a little bit more and read his book and get the information and the resources that are available there. Or you can connect with him directly if you are local or find some resources that are local to you wherever you are in the world. But make sure you reach out and you connect if you're facing something that you really shouldn't be facing alone. I feel like this connection piece, this community network piece is so important to our healing because when major things happen in our lives, we tend to isolate. We tend to think we're the only ones going through this and we can't tell anyone about it. And the part of the healing I feel comes when we start sharing and we start connecting with other people. Like you said, people who have been through these things and have come out the other end that can share some hope and some tips also around what they went through. And then we understand that we don't need to do this alone. Check the resources, check the show notes, and please connect with Jason and his resources if this is something that you're going through as well. And Jason, thank you so much for your time today. I truly appreciate you being here and sharing this message and different kind of ways and options that people can take charge of their own healing journey. So important that we get this information out there and this message out there. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing this wisdom that you have gathered over your own journey.
I appreciate it. And this was a great conversation too. You brought up some good questions as well. So thank you for having me. I appreciate the time as well.
My pleasure. And hopefully, we'll continue this conversation online on the socials and give some more of these great resources to our listeners. Thank you, Jason. Take really good care of yourself.
You too.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.